Is HDI the best index for measuring development? Human development is about enlarging people's choices and enabling them to live long, healthy and creative lives. It is much more than the rise of national income. It is about fighting poverty and living with dignity. The goal is human freedom. The Human Development Index, HDI, is a way of measuring development of a country. It is a summary composite index that measures a country's average achievements in three basic aspects of human development: health, knowledge, and income. It is measured on a scale from 0 to 1. It was first developed by the late Pakistani economist Mahbub Ul Haq with the collaboration of the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen and other leading development thinkers for the first Human Development Report in 1990. It was introduced as an alternative to conventional measures of national development, such as level of income and the rate of economic growth, as a more precise and balanced method of measuring a country's development. Measuring a country's development using economic methods, such as GNP, is concentrated on something rather alienated from human life. Commodity is good, and not people, their lives and freedom.
To tell the story of development in terms of how people are faring, not just how production is doing. I think one of the central points that Human Development Report makes is that it's not the level of income that matters, it is the use that is made of that income. Same income can be used for essential medicines, can also be used for narcotics. It can be used for military equipment and tanks. It can also be used for road construction.
The UN prefer to use HDI rather than one single indicator, as it gives a much more broader and balanced way of showing a country's development. HDI is a much better measure than GNP, gross national product, or GNI, gross national income. A country's GNP may be high, but there might be a lot of inequality in the country. For example, that women get less education than men, if any, or the country might be split by only a few rich people, but the majority of the population is poor. The Human Development Report takes many averages of a country's health, education, and income, which show a country's development in a better and more precise way. For example, Vietnam and Pakistan both have a similar GDP per capita. However, life expectancy and literacy are considerably higher in Vietnam than they are in Pakistan. If we measured the country's development only by GDP, then we would think they are both equally developed. But actually, they are not, and this is what the Human Development Report will show. Also, Saudi Arabia has a GDP per capita similar to that of Croatia. However, in Saudi Arabia, there is greater inequality between men and women when considering access to education and political power. So, although they are equal on an economic development index, Saudi Arabia is less developed on a human development index. This is why the UN prefers to use HDI rather than one single indicator. You can see a table showing different countries' HDIs. North America, Australia and parts of Europe have HDIs of 0.95 and over. Africa as a continent has one of the lowest HDIs. Places such as Sierra Leone have the lowest HDIs around 0.35. You now see a table showing the world's highest HDI ranked countries, with Norway being at the top with an HDI of 0.938, and then countries such as the United States, the Netherlands, Germany following, and then with Barbados being at number 42, with an HDI of 0.788. The UK's HDI in 2010 was 0.849. The UK is 26th out of 169 countries with comparable data. The HDI of OECD as a region increased from 0.723 in 1980 to 0.53 today, placing United Kingdom below the regional average. Spain's HDI in 2010 was 0.863. Spain's rank is 20th out of 169 countries with comparable data. Malaysia's HDI in 2010 was 0.744. Malaysia's rank is 57th out of 169 countries. The HDI of East Asia and the Pacific as a region increased from 0.391 in 1980 to 0.65 today, placing Malaysia above the regional average. Rwanda's HDI in 2010 was 0.385. Rwanda's rank is 152nd out of 169 countries. The HDI of Sub-Saharan Africa as a region increased from 0.293 in 1980 to 0.389 today, placing Rwanda just below the regional average. Bhutan's HDI was 0.619 in 2009. Bhutan's rank is 132nd out of 169 countries. You can see from the Gapminder graph that as the country's GDP increases, so does its HDI. This shows that GDP is a significant part of the Human Development Index. This, I think, is one of the biggest faults of the Human Development Report. GDP is taken as 1/3 of the country's HDI, showing that still GDP is one of the main measurements that a country's development is measured by. From this mind map, you can see some of the development indicators, including economic activity, healthcare, which is calories per person per day, death, birth ratio, life expectancy, ratio of doctors per person, electricity consumption, water access, and many others. Another development index is the Physical Quality of Life Index, PQLI. The PQLI is an attempt to measure the quality of life or well-being of a country. The value is the average of three statistics: basic literacy rate, infant mortality, and life expectancy at age 1, all equally weighed on a scale from 0 to 100. PQLI was developed for the Overseas Development Council in the mid-1970s by David Morris as one of a number of measures created due to dissatisfaction with the use of GNP as an indicator of development. PQLI might be regarded as an improvement, but shares the general problems of measuring quality of life in a quantitative way. It has also been criticized because there is a considerable overlap between infant mortality and life expectancy. I like PQLI as an indicator of development for the reason that it does not use GNP as a major factor, and I believe that a country's development should not just depend on its GNP, but also on how the people are living. The UN Human Development Index is a more widely used means of measuring well-being. UK's PQLI is 97, whereas Spain's PQLI is 92, making Spain the 28th out of 164 countries. Spain has a higher HDI than the UK, but the UK has a higher PQLI. This means that the UK probably has a higher life expectancy, less infant mortality, and a higher literacy rate, giving the UK a higher PQLI. Malaysia's PQLI was 83 in 1992. Sadly, there are no up-to-date statistics. Rwanda's PQLI was 48 in 92. Again, there were no up-to-date statistics. Overall, I think PQLI is a good index of development, but I believe it doesn't include some of the major development indicators into its national happiness. GNH is an indicator which was developed in Bhutan in the Himalayas, based on the concept elaborated in 1972. Since then, the Kingdom of Bhutan, with the support of the UN Development Programme, began to put this concept into practice and has attracted the attention of the rest of the world with its new formula to measure the progress of a community or nation. GNH is based on the principle that the calculation of wealth should consider other aspects besides economic development. For example, the preservation of the environment and the quality of life of the people. The goal of a society should be the integration of material development with psychological, cultural, and spiritual aspects, all in harmony with the earth. The four main points of GNH are the promotion of equitable and sustainable socio-economic development, the preservation and promotion of cultural values, the conservation of the natural environment, and the establishment of good governance.
To us, gross national happiness basically means that ultimately the long-term and the ultimate goal of development should be happiness, that the people should be happy. And Bhutan believes that this happiness cannot come from purely material development, economic development, but that it must be very carefully balanced with spiritual health, with the environment, and generally the quality of life.
The 9 dimensions of GNH are psychological well-being, health, use of time, community vitality, education, culture, environment, governance, and standard of living. I think that GNH is a better measure of development than HDI because not all happiness comes from money. I like the concept of GNH as it cares about the people and their environment and not so much about the wealth of the country. HDI takes into account the country's GNP, which other people in Europe and the world take as an important factor. The population in Bhutan don't care so much about money, as they live in a place where they don't need money to be happy. In Bhutan, there is psychological well-being, good health, good use of time, communities, all right education, old culture, a green non-polluted environment, good governments, the king cares about the happiness of his people, and a good standard of living. The people of Bhutan are happy, and that, I think, is the main measure of development. What use is a developed country where people are unhappy? Countries with high GNPs have lots of people who are unhappy. The wealth is split between classes, and many people are poor and are struggling to continue life. In Bhutan, people are poor by our standards, but they don't need the wealth, as they are well cared for. They have an all-right standard of living, they have education and good health, and they're happy with their lives. Mainly, I think GNH is better than HDI, but I think HDI takes in some important information, which GNH doesn't. I think that infant mortality rate is an important factor of a country's development. If many babies are dying before the age of 1, I think this shows that a country needs to develop its health services more and quickly. In Bhutan, there is a high infant mortality rate. There are 52.4 deaths in every 1,000 live births. On the HDI ranking, Bhutan is quite low down. It is ranked 132nd out of 169. But on the GNH scale, they are the highest, as all their population is happy. Bhutan's low GNP, high infant mortality rate, and low life expectancy bring it down in the ranking of the HDI. But we must remember that some people in Bhutan will live to 80 and maybe over. Everything done is for the people in Bhutan, and I cannot say the same for countries like the United Kingdom. Therefore, overall, I think that GNH is a better way of measuring development, as I think that development is all about improving the conditions that people live in and their happiness, not how much they earn. Also, I think the amount of forests and care for the environment is an important development factor, which the GNH takes into account, but HDI doesn't. Therefore, GNH is a better way of measuring development. Thank you for watching. I hope you have learnt a lot about the different development indexes.
Do you know what it feels like? Love is so